The president's not an instinctual budget cutter, and he knows there's areas of waste and he wants to get at that. But when it comes to the excitement of, okay, we can do something positive with HIV or sickle cell or polio, he gets very engaged. He will have the final word on all these budget trade-offs. I don't sense a problem with the president on these issues. I really don't.
Bill Gates admitting that climate change hysteria is a hoax is more important than you might think.
Mr. Reagan.
Before we start, be sure to check out the new Donald Trump Santa merchandise from my Teespring store. These will make awesome Christmas gifts for your dad, your husband, your son, or even yourself. And you can support the channel a little bit in this way too. Just click the link in the description below and buy a few mugs or t-shirts or sweatshirts. Your family will love it. All right, let's get into it. Bill Gates just killed the climate crisis.
Some climate funding is actually pretty low impact. I was saying to the climate community, let's adopt a metric of human well-being and look within both portfolios to make sure we're picking the right things. When there's finite money, you are making choices. So one of the reactions I got was, we should have enough money for all these things.
That's not the reality.
If I lived in that world, I wouldn't have had to write the memo. Even on the climate front, a lot of things have been preserved, funding for fission and fusion and geothermal and a lot of things.
And the left, of course, freaked out, as they always do. After spending decades telling us that we're all going to die, after pushing for trillions in climate spending, after trying to force us all to eat bugs and ban our gas stoves, Bill Gates just admitted it was all nonsense. On October 28, 2025, Bill Gates published a 17-page memo titled 3 Tough Truths About Climate. And in this memo, he basically admitted what we've been saying for years. Climate change is not going to end humanity. People will live and thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. The doomsday outlook, total BS. Now, you might think, okay, so Bill Gates had a change of heart, big deal. But this is a big deal. This is massive because Bill Gates isn't just some random billionaire. He is the face of climate alarmism, and he has been for about a decade. This is the guy who spent millions investigating how to spray calcium carbonate into the stratosphere to dim the sun. He called solar geoengineering a legitimate insurance policy against warming. He pushed this insane concept for over a decade, even while admitting the risks were massive and poorly understood. And now he says we should shift our focus from limiting rising temperatures to, get this, preventing suffering. He literally said, and I quote, "I'll let the temperature go up 0.1 degree to get rid of malaria."
I get to go out in the field and see the malaria ward where a mother's there with her children's dying of malaria. I get to go out and see that when kids are malnourished, their risk of dying is over 3 times as if they're well fed. And so a lot of people in the U.S. don't get to see the face of this and therefore to feel so good about the progress. Literally, there's malaria wards I went to early in the life of the foundation that were full during the malaria season. And when I go back now, there's not many kids there. This work has been very fulfilling for me, which is why I made the commitment that over the next 20 years, all of my money will go to these causes. And, the goal is during that time frame to get childhood deaths down and cut it in half again. And we won't get there if the number's going up.
The timing of all this, let's just call it interesting. As Peter St. Ong pointed out on X, this happens right when big tech needs gigawatts of real power for AI data centers. Solar powers and windmills cannot produce the power that is needed for the AI revolution. They need real energy, reliable energy, fossil fuel energy. Suddenly, the climate crisis doesn't seem so urgent anymore. How convenient.
Every industry, whether it's healthcare or education or you name it, is being surprised by how capable and increasingly how more accurate the AI is becoming. So we should all be in a state of wonder. Even this last month, the improvements are amazing to me. I spend, a significant amount of time looking at how we should use it. So for the foundation, we're going to make sure AI gets out to the poorest. At the same time, it's getting out to wealthy countries, getting out to them for farming advice, agricultural advice. We have a goal that an African farmer should have as much data as a rich farmer does. We're creating virtual medical advice in African native languages. We've made sure all these AI models are not just speaking English, but also speaking the African languages as well. So the opportunity for the foundation to drive equity, both in the discovery part, but in the delivery part as well, is profound.
But none of this is really why all of this is so important. I never really believed that Bill Gates was some lizard person trying to destroy civilization. I always thought that he was a well-intentioned but misguided rich guy like most elitist leftists. And look, I know a lot of people who watch this show will disagree with that, but I'm an optimist. I like to assume the best about everybody. I made a video a while back linking climate change hysteria to overpopulation hysteria, and for a long time, Bill Gates has wanted to improve health outcomes and quality of life in Africa. Now, it might seem counterintuitive that improving health and quality of life would help with overpopulation, but statistics show that as nations improve and become healthier and wealthier, the citizens of those nations have fewer children. And fair enough, it's not a bad motivation if you ask me. But here's the problem. Unfortunately for the overpopulation crowd, in spite of trillions of dollars and decades of effort, African nations remain hopelessly poor. And Africans still have the highest population growth rate on Earth. The population of Africa grew from 230 million in 1960 to 1.5 billion today. They are on track for 2.5 billion by 2050 and 3.9 billion by the year 2100. The few actual success stories, Botswana with its prudent diamond management and low corruption, Mauritius with its trade liberalization, and also the Seychelles, these regions succeed precisely by not being aid junkies. The reality is that if we want to help poor African nations draw themselves out of poverty, the best strategy would be to stop giving them aid. Leave them alone and let them figure it out. But Bill Gates, he doesn't get that. He thinks redirecting climate money to humanitarian aid will somehow fix things. It won't. But here's what really matters about Bill Gates' admission. He's finally admitting what conservatives have been saying for years. The climate catastrophe narrative was a hoax. This was always about power and control. It was never about saving the planet. Now, Bill Gates now says that health and prosperity are the best defense against climate change. He cites research from the University of Chicago showing deaths from climate change fall by more than 50% when accounting for expected economic growth. In other words, make people richer and they will be fine. And that is what capitalist conservatives have been saying all along. But the left just didn't want to hear it. They wanted their carbon taxes. They wanted their regulations. They wanted their control. And now their biggest champion just pulled the rug out from under them. But here's the really crazy thing. Climate alarmists, they don't even really understand how warming caused by CO2 emissions has actually affected or will ultimately affect the Earth and human existence. It may be that this kind of warming has actually been a good thing. And it's not just possible, it's incredibly plausible. Fossil fuel warming may well be a net win for humanity and the biosphere. The Earth has spent most of the last 500 million years with CO2 above 1,000 parts per million and no ice caps whatsoever, and life on Earth thrived. Forests stretched from pole to pole. Giant creatures roamed the Earth. We are currently in a CO2 starvation phase. 280 parts per million pre-industrial age was perilously close to the 150 parts per million plant death line. The extra 140 parts per million that we have added is the biggest greening event in geological history. NASA satellite data shows a 14 to 18% increase in global leaf area since the 1980s. That's equivalent to adding 2 continents worth of forest. More food, more drought resistance, more carbon sequestration on nature's terms, all courtesy of the so-called pollutant, carbon dioxide, that alarmists want to ban. And listen to this. Cold weather actually kills 9 times more people than heat, according to Lancet studies. Longer growing seasons in Canada, Russia, Scandinavia are already feeding billions. The slight warming that we've had, about 1.1 degrees Celsius, has coincided with the fastest decline in climate-related deaths in human history, down 98% since the 1920s. Why? Because fossil-fueled wealth buys air conditioning, sturdier homes, better famine prevention. Without anthropogenic CO2, we'd likely be sliding toward glacial conditions already. Some orbital models had the Holocene ending centuries ago. Instead, we're keeping the planet in the sweet spot that it has enjoyed for most of complex life's existence. If the next full glacial period had hit, we'd be looking at ice sheets over London and New York, sea levels that are 400 feet lower, mass starvation. Look, fossil fuels may literally be the thing that prevented civilization from ending. The alarmists never mention any of this because it ruins the panic narrative that keeps grants flowing and the private jets fueled, ironically. Now, predictably, the mainstream media is trying to spin this. Media Matters is claiming that, quote-unquote, right-wing media is misrepresenting Bill Gates' memo. The Guardian says climate scientists are criticizing Bill Gates for setting up straw man arguments. The New York Times warns that Bill Gates' memo risks feeding the narrative that business leaders are walking away from climate commitments. These leftists are terrified because they know what this means. The climate crusade is over. 10 years after the Paris Agreement, climatism is crumbling. Opposition is rising globally, and now their biggest champion just admitted it was all overblown. Bill Gates is now saying that we should focus on real problems. Thank you very much, Bill Gates. 700 million people without electricity. Yeah, I would say that that is a problem that we could probably solve. There are 2 billion people around the world without clean water. Again, we could probably solve that problem. These are actual crises. And Bill Gates even admits that cheap solar and wind have been replacing fossil fuels faster than he had expected. The worst case warming scenarios have been averted. But, at the end of the day, I don't even think that is because of anything we did. I just think that their models were totally off from the beginning. Now, Bill Gates says that AI is helping accelerate advances. In other words, the free market and innovation are solving the problem without government intervention, exactly what conservatives have been saying would happen. So, what does this all mean? It means the jig is up. The climate industrial complex just lost its most powerful advocate. Republicans now have all the ammunition they need to fight against climate taxes and regulations. The justification for extreme green policies and massive spending just evaporated. As Bhikkhu Matra posted on X, how will fake environmentalists Greta Thunberg and Dia Mirza earn a living now? The grift is over. The conspiracy theorists were right. It was all about control. It was all about wealth transfer. It was all about misinformation. And now one of the architects of that misinformation campaign has just admitted it. Bottom line, moderate warming plus 420 parts per million CO2 looks like the best climate that human beings have ever inherited. The real catastrophe would be succeeding at net zero and plunging ourselves back into the cold, low CO2 hell that dominated the Pleistocene. We are not going to be defiling Eden. We are fixing a planet that was already on life support for plants. Fossil fuels did not just build modernity, they have saved life on Earth from the next scheduled freeze. But don't expect the left to admit any of this. They're too invested in the lie, too addicted to control, too dependent on grants and power. But it doesn't matter anymore. The dam has broken. Bill Gates just killed the climate crisis, and there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. All right, guys, now that we're all in the Christmas spirit, be sure to check out my new Donald Trump Santa merch from my Teespring store. It'll make some great Christmas gifts, and you can support the channel a little this way too. Just click the link in the description and buy a few mugs or t-shirts or sweatshirts. Your family will love them. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section below. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant, it's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand.